When I woke up, I had somehow become a nameless extra in a heart-wrenching novel. I thought it was only an absurd dream, until I saw that timid gaze, belonging to a ragged little girl. In the future, she would be disfigured and betrayed, before turning completely evil. I had once been heartbroken over their tragic fates, but now, the future female villain who would overturn the world, and the pair of sisters fate had cruelly toyed with, had tragedies resting on a single choice of mine. Should I save them or not? But I was just an ordinary person. How was I supposed to defy this cursed plot and change my fate? A dull ache throbbed in the back of my head, and I suddenly opened my eyes. An unfamiliar ceiling, covered in broad patches of mold. The air was thick with the cheap smell of instant noodles, mixed with the strange odor of a damp rag. Shouldn't I have been in my luxurious gaming room, with the air conditioning on, ranting about that year's biggest piece of crap? The next second, memories surged into my mind like a tsunami, nearly killing me on the spot. Fang Yuan, 20 years old, a young man from the bottom of society, unemployed right after graduation. He lived in a rundown rental with a monthly rent of 800 yuan. And this world was precisely the awful book I had just been ranting about. I had actually transmigrated into the book. I had become a character who survived fewer than 3 chapters, and even shared my exact name, before being thrown out for failing to pay the rent, and freezing to death beneath an overpass a mere background extra. Clutching my throbbing temple, I went to the mirror. I stared at the person whose face was identical to mine, and couldn't help cursing under my breath. Damn it. Of all the characters I could have become, I had to be a background extra. In a twisted novel containing every cruel romance trope imaginable, the first heroine was treated as a tool by her family, then ruthlessly abandoned after they drained her of every last drop of blood. The second heroine went mad with love, and was treated by the male lead as a substitute for his lost love, until she eventually lost her mind. But the most outrageous case was the final female villain. She was abused as a child and bullied in her youth, then became thoroughly evil as an adult. Through her own power, she nearly wiped out the entire world. Along with the male and female leads, she was practically a world-ending demon lord. When I first read the book, I wondered whether the author had some personal grudge against the heroines. Why torment them until they were nearly dead? Now I had become part of this tragic world. Thinking of my predicament, unable even to pay next month's rent, my heart began to race. No, I had to find a way to make money fast. At the very least, I couldn't repeat the original owner's fate of freezing to death on the street. Just as I was wondering what I could do with my pitiful store of knowledge, a faint rustling came from outside the door, like a kitten scratching at it. No. Wait, even the rats in this dump were so hungry, they could barely stand. So, where would a cat come from? I held my breath and crept silently to the door, then peered through the peephole. Outside, beneath the dim sound-activated light, a tiny figure was crouching. A girl. She looked no older than 11 or 12. Her hair was as tangled as dead grass, and her face was covered in grime. The thin clothes she wore clung tightly to her frighteningly skinny body. She seemed too weak to stand from hunger. Her head kept gently tapping against the door. Her eyes were as empty as to dried-up wells. Looking at her, I instantly remembered the book's description of the final villain. Abandoned by her birth parents, bullied by the children at the orphanage, and treated by everyone as a monster who brought bad luck. Starving and freezing, she knocked on a door, only to be viciously chased away by the owner with a broom. Could that door possibly be mine? My heart began pounding. Reason told me, why the hell should I care? She was the future destroyer of worlds. Getting involved with her was like carving the word death onto my forehead. And I was a background extra who could barely keep himself alive. Why should I meddle with the boss who gave even the main characters nightmares? I could pretend I hadn't heard anything and wait for her to leave. That was the best solution. But through the peephole, the tiny figure swayed, as if she were about to collapse. She reached out with one filthy little hand, instinctively bracing herself against the cold iron door. Her fingernails made that faint scraping sound against it. She wasn't a female villain right now, just a child who was nearly starving to death. I had one side helplessly at the character's fates from behind a screen. Now, a living, breathing girl whose tragedy had not yet begun was right outside my door. Could I really watch her walk toward the fate already written for her? That dark future? To hell with the best solution. I turned the lock. With a creak, the door opened. The little girl jumped in fright and curled up like a startled stray cat. She stared at me in terror, ready to run at any moment. I crouched down, trying to make my voice sound as gentle as possible. Are you hungry? She didn't answer. She only stared at me with those empty eyes, full of wariness. I stepped aside and pointed inside. I've got food. Come in and have something to eat. She hesitated for a long time, but her stomach chose that moment to growl. The sound was loud and prolonged, echoing clearly through the silent hallway. Her face flushed bright red, and she lowered her head even further. I couldn't help laughing. Perhaps my smile helped her relax a little. She moved hesitantly and stepped inside. I rummaged through every cupboard and found only a nearly expired packet of instant noodles and 2 eggs. I cooked the noodles and poached 2 eggs on top, then brought them over to her. She stared at the steam rising from the bowl and froze for a moment. Go ahead. Careful. It's hot. She picked up the chopsticks, awkward yet desperate, and began devouring the food. The scalding broth made her cough violently, bringing tears to her eyes. But she kept stuffing noodles into her mouth. A sudden pang tightened my heart. Slow down. No one's going to take it from you. I poured her a cup of warm water. The bowl of noodles was soon empty, and she drank every last drop of broth. She put down the bowl and looked at me uneasily, before speaking in a tiny voice. My name is Bai Ningbing. With her stomach full, perhaps because of the warmth, sleepiness swept over her. Sitting on a little stool, she struggled to keep her eyes open, though her body remained tightly tense, afraid to relax. In the end, she couldn't hold on, and slumped down asleep beside my legs. Even in sleep, her little hand clutched the corner of my clothes. I looked at her filthy face as she slept, and a wild yet resolute thought rose in my heart. To hell with the plot. To hell with fate. I wouldn't just raise her. I would raise her to be lively and cheerful, with strong morals and a good heart. Wait. Saving only her didn't seem like enough. I suddenly remembered to other heroines with equally tragic fates. One was treated as a sacrifice by her family, and the other was deceived by a worthless man. According to the timeline, their tragedies were about to begin as well. If I was going to raise one, I might as well raise three. Fang Yuan, was changing careers today. I was done being a background extra. I was going to become an ally to women, the savior of tragic heroines. This rotten tragic romance, I would personally turn it into a feel-good family comedy. It took only 3 seconds for passion to take over, but only one look at my wallet to face reality. I had a grand plan to turn this tragic romance into a feel-good family comedy. Then I saw the 2 red banknotes left in my wallet, along with a few coins. That plan instantly looked painfully bare. 217 yuan and 50 cents. That was all the money the future world destroyer and I had between us. With this little money, raising 3 was out of the question. I couldn't even support myself until the end of the month. I pawned the only valuable thing I owned, a no-name watch the original owner had bought for 300 yuan, receiving 200 for it. That brought my grand total to more than 400 yuan, which finally made me feel a little more secure. Money really does give a person courage. The ancients weren't wrong about that. The next step in becoming a savior was finding the beginning of another tragedy in the book. One of the heroines, Shang Xinqi. According to the original story, Shang Xinqi's childhood had been hardly better than Bai Ningbing's. She was an illegitimate child whose mother died young and was driven out by her father's wife. From a young age, she had struggled to survive in this rough, lawless slum, holding Bai Ningbing's hand with one hand and clutching the few crumpled banknotes in the other. I entered this forgotten corner of the city. Garbage and stagnant water gave off a nauseating, sour stench. In the narrow alley, several unfriendly pairs of eyes looked us up and down. Bai Ningbing instinctively tightened her grip on my hand and shrank behind me. Don't be afraid. Just stay with me. We searched nearly the entire slum, and just as I thought we'd come back empty-handed, from the end of a run-down alley came the raucous laughter and abuse of several boys. You little beggar. You parentless bastard. Hand over your food. My heart sank. I grabbed Bai Ningbing and hurried over. Sure enough, in the corner, a frail girl was surrounded by 3 half-grown boys. She looked even younger than Bai Ningbing and glared fiercely at them, her eyes filled with defiance and stubbornness. She clutched a filthy cloth bundle tightly to her chest, probably all the food she had. I recognized her as the other heroine, Shang Xinqi. Hey, what are you doing? I shouted. The boys jumped, but when they turned and saw an adult, a trace of fear crossed their faces. Still, they shouted bravely, "None of your damn business. Mind your own business. Get lost, or I'm calling the cops." I pulled out my phone and pretended to dial. That trick worked especially well in the slum. They exchanged an angry glance, then ran off reluctantly. Only the 3 of us remained in the alley. Shang Xinqi remained in her defensive stance, watching me warily. The wariness in her eyes was even stronger than when she faced those boys. Before I could speak, Bai Ningbing slipped her hand free from mine and cautiously approached Shang Xinqi. She rummaged through her pocket and pulled out the piece of fruit candy I'd bought her earlier, which she had never dared eat. She held it out. Here. Bai Ningbing's voice was quiet but clear. Shang Xinqi froze. She stared at the crystal-clear candy sparkling in the sunlight, then looked into Bai Ningbing's clear eyes. The coldness in her gaze seemed to melt a little. I crouched down, trying to look as harmless as possible. I'm Fang Yuan. She's Bai Ningbing. And you? She pressed her lips together and said nothing. Would you come home with me? I asked tentatively. As soon as I finished speaking, the slight softening in her eyes vanished. Her voice was hoarse and cold. I'm not a beggar. That stubborn pride of hers. I suddenly found her stubbornness a little amusing, because she was exactly as the book had described. Giving her money or food outright would only hurt her pride. I changed tactics and cleared my throat before speaking solemnly. You've misunderstood. I'm not giving you charity. Shang Xinqi looked at me in confusion. It's like this. You see, I'm a grown man, and there are things that are inconvenient about caring for a girl alone. So I want to hire you. Hire me? Yes. I'll hire you as Bai Ningming's big sister and playmate, and have you help with some housework. I'll pay you a salary and provide food and lodging. Of course, it won't be a high salary, since I don't exactly look rich. Shang Xinqi was completely dumbfounded. She had probably never heard anything like that before. Seeing her waver, I pressed my advantage. Look, I just came from the pawn shop. I'm dirt poor. The three of us might as well make do and live together. You can be the pretty face and look after your little sister, while I earn money to support us. What do you think? Sounds like a fair deal, doesn't it? She looked at me, then at Bai Ningbing's hopeful face, and finally loosened her grip on the bundle in her arms. At last, she lowered her head and murmured an almost inaudible yes. Bai Ningbing happily took her hand at once, and just like that, my team of heroine rescuers successfully grew to 3. When I returned to my shabby rental with 2 little tagalongs in tow, the pressure became painfully real. The landlady blocked the doorway with her hands on her hips, staring at the 2 filthy little girls with a frown deep enough to kill a fly. Xiao Fang, what are you up to? I don't rent this place to people with children. They'll make an unbearable racket. I pleaded with her and prepaid next month's rent. Before she finally left, visibly displeased, the neighbors poked their heads out, and their strange looks pricked me like needles. I ignored them and shut the door, cutting off everything outside. Inside, Bai Ningbing was awkwardly wiping Shang Xinqi's face. Although Shang Xinqi was still a little uncomfortable, she didn't pull away. Watching this scene made all my irritation vanish. Life began spinning like a top. By day, I worked 3 jobs, serving tables at a restaurant, hauling bricks at construction sites, and handing out flyers. I came home covered in grease and smelling of sweat, dead tired. When I returned home at night, 2 pairs of bright eyes were waiting for me. I cooked for them. It didn't taste very good, but they cleaned their plates every time. I taught them to read and told them bedtime stories I made up. Shang Xinqi was very organized and kept our tiny rental spotless and orderly. Bai Ningbing became my little shadow and gradually began to smile. As we spent day after day together, an unfamiliar feeling took root in my heart. It wasn't sympathy or pity, but a heavy sense of responsibility. Looking at the 2 clean little faces sleeping beside the bed washed away all my exhaustion. That feeling was more satisfying than scoring a pentakill in a gaming room. But the pressure of life was still immense. I opened my mobile banking app. My balance was 13 yuan. I was screwed. With that little money, I had to budget carefully even to buy 3 tubs of instant noodles. No, I couldn't just sit around and wait to die. I was a man who had entered a novel, armed with a built-in spoiler cheat. How could a little money like this defeat me? I forced myself to stay focused and began recalling the plot points that could make money quickly. Lottery numbers? Forgot them. A stock destined to skyrocket. The book had mentioned one in passing, but I didn't even know its ticker. I racked my brain and finally remembered a detail. There was a minor character in the book who bought a worthless stock called Qingniao when Wang, which unexpectedly increased tenfold 3 days later. He reached the heights of success from then on, becoming a minor obstacle in the male lead's early days. So I dug out the original owner's pitiful savings and invested every penny. As I stared at the lonely few lots of stock in my account, I could almost see a beautiful future waving to me. But reality slapped me hard across the face. The first day was uneventful. On the second day, it began to fall. On the third day, it hit the daily limit down. The sea of green on my screen made me panic. My 100+ yuan vanished in an instant, leaving only single digits. I slumped in my chair, my mind completely blank. Had my arrival caused a butterfly effect? Big brother. Shang Xinqi's voice pulled me back to reality. She set a bowl of watery noodles in front of me, with a few leafy greens floating on top. This is our last bit of food. Eat. She was brief and to the point. Beside her, Bai Ningbing watched me pleadingly, still clutching the fruit candy she had never dared eat. Looking at the 2 of them, I had only one thought left. Make money. Make money by any means necessary. I split the bowl of noodles between them and chugged a large glass of cold water myself. Then I sat back down at the computer. If small plays wouldn't work, I'd make a big move. I frantically searched online for the future business giants and booming industries I remembered. When the word graphene appeared, my heart suddenly clenched. I remembered, in the latter part of the original story, the male lead's company soared because he acquired a startup with ultra-thin graphene cooling film technology. The technology was later widely used in phones and computers, and even in aerospace. But right now, the company was probably still an obscure shoestring operation. Following the clues in my memory, I searched an overlooked corner of a technology forum and found a post published by a company called Qidian Technology, seeking angel investment. The comment section was deserted, with only a few mocking replies. My chance had arrived. left, but I had no money. I steeled myself and thought of a minor character from the book, Old Chen. He worked as the network administrator at an internet cafe, a technically skilled middle-aged man who was frustrated and unfulfilled, who was honest and kind-hearted. I remember that he later made some money with a small program he wrote himself, earning a modest sum and starting a small company. When I found the rundown internet cafe, Old Chen was shaking with rage because a punk had skipped out without paying. I stopped the punk and recovered the unpaid internet fee, then got straight to the point. Old Chen, do you want to change your life? I put all my money, a screenshot of my stock account, reduced to just a few yuan, and my half-true, half-fictional business plan about graphing technology. In front of him, I was betting that he had a heart that refused to accept an ordinary life. I only have 50,000 yuan saved for marriage, every penny I own. Old Chen stared at me, his eyes filled with conflict. 1 month. I held up one finger. If there's no progress after 1 month, I'll repay this 50,000, even if I have to sell everything I own. If it succeeds, I'll give you 10% equity. Old Chen stared at me relentlessly, as if he could bore a hole through me. At last, he seemed to make up his mind and slapped a bank card on the table. Damn it, I'll take one gamble too. Holding that huge, weighty sum, my palms were drenched in sweat. This was no longer just my own life and livelihood. I had also staked Old Chen's future and the hopes of the 2 girls. The days of waiting were gray. To save money, all 3 meals became plain boiled noodles. Even leafy greens became a luxury. I didn't dare take another day off and volunteered for the hardest, most exhausting jobs at the construction site, just for the meager overtime pay. Every night, I came home feeling like my bones had fallen apart. But behind the battered metal door, 2 lights were always waiting for me. Bai Ningbing and Shang Xinqi became exceptionally sensible. Shang Xinqi learned to buy food that would last the longest for the least money, and kept our tiny rental spotless. Every day before I left, Bai Ningbing slipped a piece of candy into my pocket and whispered, "Come home safe." Once, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep on the sofa. When I woke in the middle of the night, I found myself covered by the only decent thin blanket they owned. Their 2 tiny figures were curled up on the little stools beside me, huddling together for warmth. At that moment, my nose stung, and I nearly burst into tears. I was no longer trying to defy fate and change my destiny, nor was I doing it for some damn plotline. I simply wanted to protect this family, this home, pieced together from the scattered fragments of 3 tragic lives, barely holding together. The landlady's final ultimatum arrived right on schedule, ordering us to move out within 3 days. Just when I thought we had reached the end of the road, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Is this Mr. Fang Yuan? Hello. I'm calling from Qidian Technology. From the other end of the line, the caller's voice trembled with excitement. Tengxing Group. They acquired us outright. Under your original investment agreement, your return is. As I listened to the long number, my mind began to buzz, and the whole world seemed to fall silent. I hung up and rushed into the bathroom, splashing cold water fiercely over my face. I opened my mobile banking app and stared at the string of numbers capable of changing our fate. I could hold it in no longer. Leaning against the wall, I cried and laughed like an idiot. We were saved. First, I repaid Old Chen's 50,000 yuan, then transferred 200,000 yuan directly to him. Old Chen was silent for a long time on the phone, before saying in a choked voice, "Thank you, brother." Second, I took the 2 girls, while the landlady stared in stunned disbelief, and moved out of that rundown apartment block. Our new home was a modest apartment with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, not large, but it was clean and bright. Sunlight streamed through the windows and filled the living room. We had almost no luggage, since we had thrown away everything old. I took them to the mall and bought them new clothes, new school bags, and to soft princess beds. Bai Ningbing and Shang Xinqi stood in their own brand new room, looking at the pink sheets and adorable stuffed animals. Their eyes shone with a light I had never seen before. That night, we ate at a real dining table for the first time. I extravagantly prepared for dishes and a soup. Shang Xinqi ate until her little face turned red, while Bai Ningbing carefully placed a piece of spare rib in my bowl. Big brother, eat more. The musty smell was gone from the apartment, replaced by the aroma of food and warm lights. Outside, the city glittered with countless lights, while inside, the 3 of us laughed and chatted. All that hardship was worth it. Once our lives settled down, I used the funds I had left, along with my vague memories of the next few years' booming industries, to launch several small but promising online ventures. The money multiplied far faster than I had imagined. The figures in my accounts rose steadily, and I finally had a little of the swagger of a powerful CEO, though I was only a younger version of one. Most importantly, Bai Ningbing and Shang Xinqi finally carried brand new school bags into bright classrooms. The day I took them to school, I watched them in their clean uniforms, mingling among the chattering children, and waving at me with nervous excitement. I leaned against the car door, feeling even more thrilled than when the project succeeded. There was one final name left on my task list. Yaola, the book's 2nd female lead, a wealthy heiress abandoned by her family, yet still as proud as a peacock. According to the timeline, she should have already been thrown out of her home and left homeless. I searched for her for a long time, using every connection I had. Finally, a real estate developer friend gave me a lead that led me to an abandoned European-style villa on the outskirts of the city. It was said to have once belonged to her family. Before being seized, I parked outside the abandoned villa and pushed open the rust-covered iron gate. Amid those silent ruins, I saw her. Yaola. She was curled up in a corner by the fireplace, her once expensive dress reduced to tatters and covered in stains. She was emaciated, with no tears in her eyes, only a dead emptiness. Get out. Her voice was as hoarse as if sandpaper had scraped it raw. I didn't leave. I placed the food and water I had brought a short distance from her and said, "My name is Fang Yuan." It was a simple introduction. I said nothing more. I simply came every day to bring food, then sat quietly nearby. Sometimes I told her amusing stories about Shang Xinqi and Bai Ningbing. She never responded, but the food I brought always disappeared by my next visit, until a week later, when I brought Shang Xinqi and Bai Ningbing with me. When Shang Xinqi saw her condition, her eyes instantly reddened. Bai Ningbing gathered her courage and walked over, offering her a piece of chocolate. "Sister, come home with us." Yaola looked at the two clean, warm girls before her, then at her own filthy body. From those lifeless eyes, a single burning tear finally rolled down. That day, the back seat of my beat-up car held my entire family for the first time. Yao's arrival made our home much livelier. At first, she was like a hedgehog covered in spines, pricking anyone who came near. Shang Xinqi quietly cooked for her, while Bai Ningbing awkwardly told her jokes. I was responsible for providing the material necessities, and serving as the gullible fool she occasionally insulted without letting me talk back. One rainy night, I came home after working late and saw the living room light on. Yaola was sitting on the sofa, with a design book in her hands, and a glass of warm milk beside her. "There's food for you in the kitchen." She didn't even look up. I looked at her and smiled. It seemed the hardest days were truly behind us. Time seemed to hit the accelerator, and years passed in the blink of an eye. A few years later, my little workshop had become a fairly well-known tech company, and I had gone from a penniless nobody to President Fang. What made me prouder were my three girls. Shang Xinqi was accepted into a top finance university. Her instinct for numbers and cool head had already led her to advise me on several investment projects. Bai Ningbing entered an art academy, and sunlight filled her paintings as she won award after award. Yaola entered the field of architectural design she loved and became its brightest rising star. Still, I gradually began to feel that something was off. "Big brother, the soup's cold. I can't finish my model. When are you coming back to take a look? I'm about to cry. Fang Yuan, if you don't come back soon, there won't be breakfast at the office tomorrow." For example, whenever I attended a business dinner and chatted a little too long with the female CEO of a partner company, I would feel 3 X-ray-like stares the moment I got home, sweeping over me again and again. Shang Xinqi would silently bring me a glass of bitter melon juice, saying it would cool me down and ease the heat. Bai Ningbing would hold my arm and ask with an innocent expression, "Big brother, who is that lady? Is she prettier than my paintings?" Yaola, meanwhile, would give a cold laugh and slap a dossier on one of my competitors in front of me. "If you have time for romance, you should figure out how to crush them instead." For a while, I thought I had played the role of father to successfully and given my daughters a bit of a daddy complex. That was until one night, when I drank too much and had to be helped home by my driver. Half conscious, I felt someone wiping my face. I opened my eyes a sliver and saw 3 beautiful faces hovering over me, quietly arguing about something. "I told you, I'll take care of him." "No." Big brother said the spare ribs I made were delicious today. HMPH. He also wore the perfume I recommended today. Me. I sobered up instantly. I decided to play dead. As long as I kept my eyes closed, the whole romantic showdown would pass me by. However, I never got that showdown at home, because the male lead from the original novel arrived first. At a business reception, a man blocked my path. He wore a bespoke suit, an Patek Philippe watch, radiating the unmistakable arrogance of a tycoon. Wang Dateng, the original novel's male lead. My heart sank. I instinctively glanced at Yaola, who was chatting with friends nearby. Sure enough, Wang Dateng's gaze was like an eagle locking onto its prey and clung relentlessly to Yaola. I knew that look all too well, exactly as the book described the look of someone seen, a substitute for his idealized first love. What was bound to happen had finally arrived. President Fang. Wang Dateng raised his glass, with a smug smile curling at the corner of his mouth. "I've heard a great deal about you. You're too kind, President Wang." I replied without expression. "I prefer to get straight to the point." He jerked his chin toward Yaola. "That woman has caught my eye. Name your price." Anger surged through me as I looked at him. Name my price? What did he take Yaola for? A commodity? Almost grinding my teeth, I forced the words through clenched teeth. "President Wang, that's my sister. You seem to have misunderstood. Your sister? Wang Dateng looked as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. President Fang, who in our circle doesn't know you're an orphan. Where did this sister come from? Did you adopt her? That makes it even more interesting. He stepped closer and lowered his voice, issuing an unquestionable command. I don't care what she is to you. In 3 days, have her come to me herself, or that little company of yours, which has only just begun to take off. I won't mind lifting a finger to make it disappear from this world. The hand gripping my glass had knuckles that turned white from the pressure. I knew very well that with my current strength, taking on Tengxing Group head-on would give me no chance of winning. But behind me stood Yaola, Shang Xinqi, and Bai Ningbing, the family I had struggled so hard to build. I looked at Wang Dateng's smug, triumphant face, and suddenly smiled. President Wang. I drained the red wine in my glass, then turned the empty glass upside down and slammed it onto the table before him. I'm afraid you can't afford her. Wang Dateng's expression darkened instantly. It seems President Fang refuses a friendly offer and wants the hard way. He snorted coldly and walked away. I knew the war had begun. Over the next few days, my company came under an unprecedented assault. Partners inexplicably broke their contracts. Banks suddenly demanded repayment of our loans, and our key technicians were poached with huge salaries. Negative news flooded every outlet. The company's stock price plummeted, and the employees panicked. Every day, I worked myself ragged at the office until midnight, then pretended everything was fine when I got home. But the girls were far too perceptive. That night, I dragged my exhausted body through the front door and found the living room light on. All 3 girls were sitting neatly on the sofa, their solemn expressions making it feel like a full-blown tribunal. Talk. What's going on? Yaola got straight to the point. I fell silent. Shang Xinqi took out a tablet, displaying Tengxing Group's recent moves and an analysis of the pressure on our company. It was organized and instantly clear. It was Wang Dateng, wasn't it? What does he want? Before I could answer, Bai Ningbing suddenly said with reddened eyes, Big brother, is it because of us? Did we cause trouble for you? If sending me away will solve everything, what are you talking about? I cut her off sharply, my voice so loud that even I was startled. I looked at the 3 of them. Their eyes held worry and fear, but not one of them showed any intention of backing down. I took a deep breath and told them everything Wang Dateng had demanded. He can forget it. I would rather die than go to him. We can't just sit here and wait to be killed. We can't beat him head-on. We have to find his weakness. I can hack his computer. I held back this impulsive future supervillain, torn between laughter and tears. Don't do anything reckless. This is a society governed by law. Wang Dateng's ultimatum arrived right on schedule. It was a text message, short and to the point. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I expect to see the person I want to see, or you will bear the consequences. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in front of my computer, frantically searching my memory for every detail from the original novel. Wang Dateng's company, Tengxing Group, was powerful, but the book had briefly mentioned later on that to expand rapidly, he had used all kinds of underhanded methods and exploited countless legal loopholes. Evidence. I need evidence. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I entered keyword after keyword, digging up abandoned forums one after another, along with archived news reports. Just before dawn, I found an old post on an encrypted financial forum in which an anonymous user revealed that Tengxing Group had originally used illegal fundraising and falsified data to build its initial fortune. My heart gave a sudden jolt. The poster's ID looked strangely familiar. Then it hit me. He was a supporting character in the book, driven to ruin by Wang Dateng, a top-tier hacker. I had found the lever that could move the world. Without the slightest hesitation, I immediately reached the person behind that online handle through every channel I could. At first, he didn't trust me, but after I revealed details that only the book had mentioned about him and his family, he fell silent. Why should I help you? What do I gain from bringing down Wang Dateng? For no other reason. I looked at the pale light spreading across the sky outside. For the sake of your wife, whom he drove to jump from a building, and your daughter, who is still in a psychiatric hospital. Can you really live with that? A stifled roar came through the phone. Like a trapped beast. Send me everything incriminating you have on him. Over the next few hours, my inbox was flooded. From tax evasion and hostile acquisitions to violating user privacy. Some cases even involved several deaths. All the evidence of Tengxing Group's misconduct was laid bare. I didn't hand it all over to the police. I knew that with Wang Dateng's methods, he might very well bury it. What I had to do was make him fall on the battlefield he knew best. I sorted all the evidence by category and packaged it anonymously, then sent it to Tengxing Group's greatest rival, another business giant, Qidian Group. The rest was no longer my concern. At 7:50 that morning, 10 minutes remained until Wang Dateng's deadline. My phone rang. It was Wang Dateng. Fang Yuan, my patience is limited. His voice carried a hint of impatience. I walked to the window, where the 3 girls downstairs were laughing and playing in the sunlight. President Wang, you should worry about your company first. Almost the instant I finished speaking, a financial news alert popped up. Breaking. Qiao Group has publicly accused Tengxing Group of multiple serious violations. With conclusive evidence, Tengxing Group's stock plunged to the daily limit at the opening bell. As panic selling swept the market, a special investigation team has been dispatched to Tengxing Group. One breaking story after another surged to the top of the financial news pages. On the other end, Wang Dateng's breathing grew ragged, followed by the crash of a cup shattering and his hysterical roar. I hung up. At last, the world was quiet. I looked at the three girls outside my weakness and my armor. For the first time, I felt utterly at peace. To hell with the male lead. To hell with the plot. They're my people, and I'll protect them. No one lays a hand on them. After dealing with the enormous problem that was Wang Dateng, life seemed to resume normal playback and return to its proper course. Tengxing Group's business empire came crashing down, becoming nothing more than outdated financial news. But our lives bloomed more brilliantly amid the ruins. A few years passed in the blink of an eye. My little company had become an up-and-coming force no one in the industry could underestimate. But I was still proudest of the three young women at home. Shang Xinqi became the most composed trader in finance. The projects she handled brought terrifyingly high returns, and everyone in the industry called her an emotionless money-making machine. Only I knew that whenever she saw a stray cat, she secretly bought the most expensive cat food to feed it. Bai Ningbing's talent blossomed fully in the arts. Her paintings were bold and warm in color, always soothing the heart. While still young, she held solo exhibitions where tickets were impossible to find. The little girl who once had empty eyes now had a light in her eyes, brighter than the stars. As for Yaola, her pride and talent made her the brightest rising star in architectural design. Her buildings possessed classical elegance and a modern edge, just like her. It was the weekend. To celebrate the successful completion of an acquisition led by Shang Xinqi, I personally took charge of the kitchen and prepared a lavish banquet fit for royalty. The kitchen was bustling, and laughter filled the living room. Brother, let me help you. Shang Xinqi walked out of the kitchen carrying freshly made hot soup, with a satisfied smile on her face. Then, everything changed in an instant. Someone accidentally knocked a toy onto the floor, and Shang Xinqi slipped, suddenly losing her balance. Look out, I cried out. But it was already too late. The soup pot shattered, spilling scalding broth across the floor and splashing Shang Xinqi's ankle. The rich aroma of chicken soup filled the air, mixed with the terrifying searing heat. Shang Xinqi sucked in a sharp breath from the pain, and her lips instantly turned white. At that moment, I felt my heart miss a beat. I rushed over, ignoring the mess on the floor, and swept her into my arms, my voice trembling. I'll take you to the hospital right now. Bai Ningbing and Yaola were frightened too, following close behind. The entire house, because of this minor accident, descended into complete chaos. At the hospital, after treating the wound, the doctor repeatedly warned her to keep it dry and rest. Shang Xinqi's ankle was wrapped in thick gauze. She herself remained remarkably calm, and even comforted us instead. I'm fine. It just looks worse than it is. How could I possibly relax? I canceled every non-urgent meeting at the company, and started working from the hospital. I peeled apples, gave her water, and changed her bandages. At first, Shang Xinqi was a little uncomfortable, but soon settled into ordering me around. Apples, water, and newspapers arrived without fail. This exclusive pampering lasted 3 days, before another little problem came knocking. That day, I was reading a financial newspaper to Shang Xinqi when my phone rang. It was Bai Ningbing. As soon as I answered, her weak voice came through, trembling with tears. Brother, I feel awful. My head is spinning, and I'm freezing. My heart lurched, and I quickly asked where she was. I'm home. I just finished painting, and now I can't stand up. I didn't dare waste time. After telling Shang Xinqi what was happening, I rushed home. The moment I opened the door, I saw Bai Ningbing wrapped in a blanket, curled up on the sofa, her little face flushed bright red. Her lips were cracked, and she looked utterly miserable. I touched her forehead. It was alarmingly hot. Without a word, I bundled her into the car and sped back to the hospital. After a thorough examination, the doctor's conclusion was acute gastroenteritis, compounded by exhaustion. She needed to stay in the hospital for observation. So my caregiving duty went from looking after one person to looking after two. I simply booked a private-to-bed hospital suite. Shang Xinqi lay on the left with her injured ankle, and Bai Ningbing on the right, suffering from vomiting and diarrhea. I spun around like a top, moving constantly between the two beds. I had barely finished changing Shang Xinqi's bandages when Bai Ningbing began to whine. Brother, I want porridge. I want you to make it yourself. I hurried home and cooked porridge, then brought it back and fed it to her. Then Shang Xinqi handed me a stack of documents. Brother, there's something wrong with this project's data. Could you take a look? I was rushed off my feet, yet my heart felt incredibly full, until Yaola came to visit them. At that moment, I was disinfecting Shang Xinqi's wound with a cotton swab in my left hand, while holding up a spoon to give Bai Ningbing her medicine with my right. Bai Ningbing's eyes lit up when she saw Yaola, and deliberately raised her voice to whine sweetly. Brother, you're feeding me to fast? My mouth is so small. Shang Xinqi refused to be outdone. She gave a soft hiss and said with a frown, "Brother, be gentler. It hurts me." I felt like I wasn't in a hospital at all. Yala leaned against the doorway with her arms crossed, taking it all in. She said nothing, but the corner of her mouth curved into a knowing half-smile. She didn't stay long. She set down the fruit basket and left. That evening, I went home to prepare their meals for the next day. The enormous house was empty, with only one light on in the kitchen, making it feel rather desolate. I was chopping vegetables when faint footsteps suddenly sounded behind me. I turned around and saw Yala. I had no idea when she had come back. She had changed into silk pajamas and stood silently behind me, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. "Why didn't you stay at the hospital a little longer?" I was a little surprised. "What's there to see?" She walked over to me, picked up a washed tomato, and took a bite, speaking indistinctly. Watching those to show off in front of me made my hands pause, and I gave an awkward smile. Just childish behavior. Childish. Yala set down the tomato and suddenly leaned close to me. The distance between us was so small that I could smell the fragrance in her hair. "Fang Yuan." She raised her hand and lightly traced my Adam's apple with her fingertip. The cool touch made my whole body stiffen. "You think they're children? What does that make me?" Under her icy fingertip, my Adam's apple bobbed uncontrollably. My body went rigid. The soup continued bubbling away in the kitchen. I could smell the fresh scent of her after her shower, mixed with the sweet and tart scent of juice released from freshly cut tomatoes, creating a strange, dangerous atmosphere. My mind went completely blank. I had raised them for so many years, always seeing myself as their guardian and older brother. I had watched them grow from pitiful, skeletal little girls into the graceful young women they were today. I was proud of them and took pride in them, but I had never imagined this possibility. "Yaola, stop fooling around." Almost instinctively, I took a step back. I nearly dropped the kitchen knife in my hand. The moment those feeble words left my mouth, even I found them ridiculous. She stared at me, with not the slightest hint of a joke in her eyes. "I'm not fooling around." Yaola withdrew her hand and folded her arms across her chest, watching my flustered state with leisurely amusement. "Fang Yuan, you're a man, not a saint. Do you plan to be their brother for the rest of your life?" The soup's about to boil over," she suddenly reminded me. Grateful for the escape, I hurriedly turned to switch off the heat, moving so abruptly that I nearly swept the spatula onto the floor. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. I didn't dare look back at her again, using the task of cleaning the kitchen to hide my panic and confusion. I heard her let out a soft laugh, followed by the sound of her slippers on the floor, gradually fading into the distance. I fled like the most cowardly deserter. That night, I shut myself in my room, but couldn't fall asleep. Every word she had said kept circling through my mind. I was no longer the dirt-poor background character I had once been, and they were no longer little girls who needed my protection. Yaola had placed the problem I had always avoided directly in front of me. I couldn't keep pretending not to see it anymore, but I was still too afraid to admit it. At some point, wind rose outside the window, rustling the leaves. Lightning streaked across the sky, and thunder soon came rolling after it. It started to rain. Just when I thought I was destined to spend the night awake, there was a soft knock at my door. Knock, knock, knock. My heart jumped. I guessed almost instantly who was outside. I stayed silent, but whoever stood outside was very patient. The thunder grew louder, and raindrops pelted the glass. The knocking continued stubbornly. In the end, I gave in. I opened the door. Yaola stood there in the silk pajamas, with a pillow in her arms. Another flash of lightning swept across the sky, making her delicate face look pale, with a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm afraid of thunder," she put it simply. The excuse was so flimsy that it made me laugh. Back then, in that abandoned villa, she had been like a lone wolf, afraid of nothing, and now she was afraid of thunder. "The guest room has a window facing that big tree. I'm afraid lightning will strike me." That left me with nothing to say. We faced each other across the doorway. I stepped aside to let her in, then took a blanket from the closet and tossed it onto the floor. "You take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." She glanced at the bedding on the floor, then at me, said nothing, and walked straight to my bed. She lifted the covers and climbed in, then patted the empty space beside her. "The floor is cold." In the end, I lay down beside her. I placed a pillow between us as a clear dividing line, keeping myself far away from her. "Fang Yuan." In the darkness, she suddenly spoke. My voice was slightly hoarse. "You can't sleep?" It wasn't a question, but a statement. I didn't answer. She suddenly turned onto her side, facing me, easily crossing the line of pillows between us. "I can't sleep either," she said wistfully. "I've been thinking about that rundown villa, and the first time you appeared there, I wondered, what had this man come there to do? Was he there to mock me, or to save me?" My heart clenched painfully. Later, I realized you were neither. You only saw me as a problem, a responsibility, just like by Ningbing and Shang Xinqi. "That's not true. Don't deny it." She cut me off. "Fang Yuan, look at me. I slowly turned around, and in the instant another bolt of lightning split the sky. I saw her face clearly. I'm not a child anymore. Outside the window, thunder exploded. She leaned in, and her cool lips pressed against mine. In that instant, the rain and thunder, and every sound in the world disappeared. The thread of reason in my mind snapped with a sharp twang. The next morning, my phone's ringing woke me. Light streamed through the gap in the curtains, and the rain had stopped. The space beside me was empty, but her scent still lingered in the air. The pillows still bore the impression of where she had lain, reminding me that the previous night's events had not been a dream. I answered the call. It was the hospital. Mr. Fang, Miss Bai Ningbing and Miss Shang Xinqi can be discharged today. I thought, good heavens, are you messing with me? When I brought Shang Xinqi and Bai Ningbing home, we were greeted by Yaola, wearing an apron, and busy in the kitchen. She saw us and smiled naturally. You're back? Perfect. Lunch is almost ready. Shang Xinqi's gaze moved between my face and Yaola, and in those usually calm eyes, a hint of curiosity flashed. Bai Ningbing, meanwhile, flung herself into my arms like a little butterfly and said sweetly, Brother, I've missed you so much. I looked at Yaola and met her smiling eyes. At the dining table, the atmosphere began to turn strange. Brother, did you peel these shrimp? They're delicious. Shang Xinqi picked up a shrimp and looked at me with a bright smile. No. Yaola took a leisurely sip of soup and said casually, You woke up late this morning, so I peeled them. The smile on Shang Xinqi's face stiffened. Brother, Bai Ningbing placed a piece of spare rib in my bowl. Try this. I love the sweet and sour ribs you make. I was just about to speak when Yaola wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin and said calmly, I made this dish too. He didn't sleep well last night, so I couldn't bring myself to wake him this morning. Boom. I could almost hear the thunderclaps explode in Shang Xinqi and Bai Ningbing's hearts. The two of them stopped eating at the same time and turned to stare at me before looking at the seemingly innocent Yaola. Their expressions were as complicated as a doctoral dissertation. Shock, suspicion, and hurt finally became for words. Someone had stolen our home. After the meal, Yaola went to cut some fruit while I prepared to clear the dishes. Shang Xinqi and Bai Ningbing blocked me at the kitchen door, one on each side. Brother, you and Sister Yaola aren't hiding something from us, are you? Bai Ningbing grabbed my arm and asked softly, her eyes rimmed with red. Brother, do you not want us anymore? I felt completely overwhelmed. Yaola walked over carrying a fruit platter and held a slice of watermelon to my lips. Open up. Look at you. You're exhausted and sweating. Then, right in front of the other two girls, she reached out and gently brushed the corner of my mouth with her fingertip, removing a watermelon seed. Shang Xinqi clenched her fist, and Bai Ningbing's expression darkened. My heart sank. After that day, the atmosphere at home changed considerably. Bai Ningbing no longer called Yaola sister all day long, and Shang Xinqi's gaze toward her grew more hostile. Yet the two girls seemed to have formed an alliance and were plotting something. I constantly watched for conflicts between them, afraid they would damage their relationship. I was worrying for nothing, but their bond suffered little damage until one night when we celebrated another anniversary of becoming a family. Everyone drank heavily. Yaola was Bai Ningbing and Shang Xinqi's primary target. In my drunken haze, I could only see her pretty, youthful face, flushed rosy red, and before long, she slumped face down onto the table. Then, Bai Ningbing and Shang Xinqi worked together to carry her to the sofa and covered her with a thin blanket. After that, my memory ended with me returning to my room and falling asleep almost unconsciously. Deep into the night, the moon hid behind the dark clouds. Someone suddenly knocked on my bedroom door. Half asleep, I mumbled, Who is it? Brother, it's Sister Yaola. Hearing Yaola's name, I forced myself up and went to open the door. I didn't notice that Yaola didn't usually call me brother. When I opened the door, under the corridor's dim light, there were two figures. One had her hands behind her back, seemingly holding something. The other wore a broad, radiant smile. It was only later that I learned the object was